All right, so we're going to give everybody just maybe another minute or so just to kind of get it in. We thank you so much for being here. And again, this is the Kickoff rally to end qualified immunity in New York. 2022 is the year that we are going to do it. We are determined and we demand it. And there's more than enough. There's more than enough reason to do it. So we have a group of individuals here on the legislative side and the community side that are really pushing, backing, supporting everything that we do, making a lot of noise. For a small group of people, we are making a lot of noise and we are making a lot of traction. And it's all because of you who are here now. So, nope, can't hear you just yet, but he's coming. He's coming. I can tell he's coming. I can tell he's getting ready to go. Our champion of champions. Love this dude.
End it. Let's end it. Ring the bell when it's.
I love it.
Making all that noise. Well, let's end qualified immunity.
That's right. Let's end qualified immunity. That's what I'm talking about. I love to hear it.
Turn on the light. Shine some light on it. I had to look for my props anywhere in the office. Grab anything as a prop, you know. Turn the light on it.
That's
Ring
right.
the bell. Some noise.
That's right. We love it. This is fantastic. And that's the energy that's the energy that we bring, right? That's the energy we bring from the top to the bottom. We believe in what it is we're doing, and you'll see it. You'll hear it in the actions and the words of our elected officials that are showing up. That speaker lineup that we have, powerful, very powerful. At this point, 3:35, we're going to go ahead and start this thing and kick this thing off properly. So first and foremost, thank you so much, everyone, for being here. We are eternally grateful, especially for us at the End QI NY camp. We are a bunch of volunteers that recognize the importance of this conversation. And we put our time and effort and resource and money where our mouth is, even when we don't have it. We stand up, we show, we come here, we make it happen. And like I said, we do it with a small group of individuals that is slowly getting larger and more powerful and more influential. And that's what these conversations and these moments and these events are all about. So we're going to go ahead and give you a quick intro and a little bit of words of wisdom as we start to introduce what we're doing here and why it's so important. And then we're going to get into our speakers who are just unbelievably powerful. You really are in for something. So, all right, let's go ahead. Thank you all for being here and showing your support for the bills to end qualified immunity, S1991 in the Senate and A4331 in the Assembly. These bills recognize that it is past time to end the doctrine of qualified immunity, as it now acts as an absolute shield, protecting law enforcement and government officials from accountability when they have clearly violated the constitutional rights of citizens of New York. This common sense legislation that leaves no room for two systems of law in New York. It is a bold, comprehensive approach to changing the culture of law enforcement, empowering the victims of police brutality, and building trust between law enforcement and our communities. Qualified immunity is not just a thorn in the community side. It also serves as a dividing line between good cops and bad apples. And when qualified immunity is removed, no longer will police and correction officers have to excuse their colleagues or hide behind walls of silence to protect bad actors. Communities will feel encouraged to engage and heal their damaged and broken relationships with their local law enforcement. Ending qualified immunity will also help to create the action required to fundamentally transform the culture of aggressive policing and systemic racism that tends to be a universal characteristic in so many of these cases. At the core of our demand are measures designed to remove barriers to holding law enforcement officers accountable for police brutality. This will pave a pathway for people who have had their civil rights abused to find recourse. Furthermore, we have seen horrific abuses by law enforcement in the last few years that have galvanized these conversations and the demand for police accountability. When we look at the George Floyd incident that sparked so much national and global outrage and frustration, we are able to recognize that we have similar horrific cases of police abuse right here in New York. Kenneth Chamberlain Sr., Daniel Prude, Eric Garner, Dante Taylor, Jason Jones, Brandon Rodriguez, among so many others. And in addition to that, we have a human rights catastrophe occurring at Rikers Island right now. There are so many individuals who need to be held accountable for the atrocities that are taking place in those facilities. But for us in New York, we don't have to look very far at all for instances where qualified immunity has hampered the ability of individuals and their loved ones to find closure for their loss or injury. But we are hopeful and find comfort in the coalition and collaboration efforts that have borne fruit to all of us gathering here today. So I would like to take note as we celebrate the birthday of one of our greatest civil rights leaders, that we remember his commitment to serving the community by holding the mirror of justice to those in power. The moral arc of the universe is not going to bend itself. One of my favorite quotes from Martin Luther King Jr., "Power without love is reckless and abusive, and love without power is sentimental and anemic. Power at its best is love implementing the demands of justice, and justice at its best is power correcting everything that stands against love." That's right. Justice at its best is power correcting everything that stands against love. And today, we present a collection of people that are dedicated to justice and determined to get there through love. And we are so proud to introduce some of the champions of this cause and the proponents of justice for all New Yorkers. And with that, first up is the sponsor of our bill, S 1991, from the City Council to the New York Senate. Senator Robert Jackson of the 31st District has taken on difficult fights on behalf of New Yorkers and has never backed down. And it is no surprise that his top priority in 2022 is to end qualified immunity to protect New Yorkers. Senator Jackson, welcome and thank you.
We'll say, what are you ringing the bell for? We want to end qualified immunity. Ring the bell. You don't have a bell, then grab anything as a prop and shine the light on it. And basically, I say to you that in looking at the number of state senators that have signed on, we don't have enough. We need to work harder. People say, well, I'm working hard already. We need to work harder. We, all of us, me included. Do you know what I mean? That's so important. I remember going back when the Campaign for Fiscal Equity, we filed a lawsuit and in 1993, and people said, are you crazy? You can't sue the state. No, we sued the state. You can't win. Well, we won. Did it take a long time? Yes, it did, but we never gave up. We had good attorneys that were committed and also leaders that were committed in order to make sure that the billions of dollars that our children need to get a good education so that their foundation from an education point of view helps everyone. But let me just say this to all of you. We have a lot of work to do because people will say, well, you're against the police? No, we're not against the police. The police are there to ensure that the people of our community are safe, okay? And this bill is not against police, it's not against correction officers, it's against the bad ones that do things illegally in violation of the federal or state laws, the Constitution. We want them punished for that. They should be fired and criminal charges. Look at today. I'm watching New York One all today. He's a sergeant now, and I don't know if he was a sergeant back 5-6 years ago when this woman in the Bronx was shot because she had a bat. This is a woman that had some mental health issues. She had 65 years old, had a bat, and he shot her dead. because allegedly she was coming at him with a bat. Now, wait a minute. You're a police officer with experience, with a vest on and everything. A woman, an old woman, coming at you with the bat, and you shoot her to death, and you kill her, and he's up on charges right now. But you know, that life is not coming back. Yes, the city settled with the $2 million lawsuit for the family of the victim, but you know, people want justice, especially if, for example, you have a relative that you know, in your opinion, based on the facts that you know, was murdered and killed, and illegal actions by the police or correction officers or anyone else that have the authority in their hands. That's not acceptable. And what this is doing is communicating loud and clear to everyone. If you violate our rights under the federal or state laws and our family's rights, we're going to fight you tooth and nail. That's what we're saying. And so hopefully by us passing our bill will then make a game changer as far as people, family members will then have a right to sue the state, the city, the individuals involved when you violate our rights. Our rights are very, very ingrained in our Constitution, state and federal Constitution. And when you do that, then you got to know you're going to be held accountable. And that's all we're saying, is that you cannot violate our rights and get away with it. We're going to fight you tooth and nail. And that's why I said the next time we have a rally, I'm going to bring a bigger bell. That people at the rally, obviously, if everyone brought a bell, right? Then people all over the place going, why are they ringing the bell? We're ringing the bell to end qualified immunity. What is that? Qualified immunity that police or correction officers or any public official violate the rights of our brothers, our sisters, our mothers, our fathers, our cousins, our nieces, our nephews. When they violate my right, in violation of the law, they need to be held accountable. That's what qualified immunity ending it will do. And right now, from a legal point of view, from everything that I know, from everything, all of the activists and mothers and fathers and sisters and brothers and Matthew Levy and Aaron Rose and my staff, they're in here too. They tell me that so far, the Supreme Court has said that if certain things are not met, then the correction officer, police officer, those who violated our relatives' rights, they have qualified immunity. And we want to strike that from the state of New York by filing this piece of legislation. And when it's signed into law, any court you can go to in order to seek justice. And so with that, I want to thank all of the activists that are committed to be involved in this until we get justice. And so with that, I'll stop and I'll ring the bell. I'm not ringing it soft like this. Like this.
That's right. Let it ring, let it ring, let justice ring. I don't know about y'all, but I think we need more cowbell, y'all. More cowbell, right? That's what I'm talking about.
You know, I happen to see this. I'm saying, wait a minute, because I like to use props. So where can I say, wait a minute, this is from the Farm Bureau of New York, this little bell here. And let me tell you, it's loud. It's loud when you really put some energy in it, it's loud.
That's right. And it never more important than today, Senator Jackson.
In fact, I'm going to bring the bell, another bell, whenever we have a rally, because I'm going to ring the bell. And I want people to ring the bell. And we got, instead of talking the talk, we have to walk the walk also. You know, we may have a rally and walk, just like Martin Luther King walked, just like I walked from New York to Albany for education. We have to walk and talk and hold rallies and lobby our leaders, our governor, and everyone else to do the right thing on behalf of all of the people that have been unjustly killed, hurt, and the families that are suffering, waiting for justice. So thank you.
Thank you so much, son. I really do appreciate that. And everybody here appreciates your words of power. They are exactly what we need to hear as we continue to galvanize each other and get ready to push through the remainder of this session. Next up, again, we were so fortunate in terms of our sponsorship of this bill and the leaders that came to our aid and our call. Sponsoring the bill in the Assembly is Assemblywoman Pam Hunter in the 128th District, representing Syracuse and surrounding towns in the upstate region. Having served on the Syracuse Common Council and Public Safety Committee, Assemblywoman Hunter is a stalwart defender of human rights and our proud sponsor in the Assembly. Welcome, Assemblywoman Pam Hunter. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary, very much. Thank you, Senator Jackson, and thank you to all of the folks in the coalition. I always have to give big props to Darlene. When you all hear her story later, you will know why we are hard charging for her family and for the rest of yours in order to get this qualified immunity bill passed. So yesterday was MLK Day. Every day is MLK Day for folks who are living and walking and breathing defenders of human rights. But yesterday, MLK Day, you know, I had an opportunity to listen to a church service, and the pastor, he was well into it, and he was talking about a scripture, and one of them was talking about the storm's coming. And I wrote back in the chat, the storm is here, and the storm is right now, and this is what we need to bring. Justice delayed is justice denied. That's what's happening all around our country. When we hear naysayers talking about bail reform, and you're always bashing the police, this is about our constitutional rights. This is wanting to make sure that you, me, everyone we know are constitutionally protected. These are our rights and we want them. That's what we need to make sure for all of the folks who are out there in the community who are just talking about things that aren't true, that we need to make sure we always start the conversation with my constitutional rights were violated. His constitutional rights were violated. If we want a legal course of action when our constitutional rights are trampled on, then we need to pass this qualified immunity bill. If we want municipalities to take responsibility for their bad actors, their bad public servants, then we need to pass qualified immunity. If we are serious about wanting to protect constitutional rights for our neighbors and community members, friends, loved ones in New York, then we need to pass qualified immunity. It's that simple. I don't care about political expediency. I don't care if this is an election year. This is about us. This is about wanting to make sure that the people that we represent are protected, that our family members, our friends, people we don't even know, we want to make sure that their constitutional rights are protected. Now, the senator is right. We got work to do. We've come a long way, but we got a lot further to go. In the Assembly, we have 107 majority members. Unfortunately, we have lost Assembly members to running for other offices. We've lost Assembly members because they have taken jobs with the governor's office. And so we started this session with last year with 107 members. We're down to 103 majority members. At this point, there are only 34 Assembly member co-sponsors. I know that the senator made mention that he is looking for more co-sponsors in the Senate. I believe they have 21 over there. He's got half, I got a third. That's still not enough. I know that we don't need, you know, the majority in order to get it across the line, but it speaks volumes when we have co-sponsors who say that they're willing to walk out there and be courageous and talk about something that's important and sometimes controversial, but shouldn't be, because we're talking about our constitutional rights, right? So we need to do a better job. If you talk to the people that are in your constituency, have them be, you know, very targeted in what they're doing. You know, look at the list of people who are the co-sponsors and have a specific ask for the people who co-sponsored. Will you call this person? Can you speak out? Will you write a letter to the editor? And for the people who have not yet signed on, a specific ask to them: do you care about constitutional rights for the constituents that you serve? Start that conversation. We have to be very specific. I know people are feeling frustration, from the right and from people who are, spreading lies and rhetoric, and that there's a lot going on and COVID is still here. But my rights need to be protected today too, and so do yours. So I'm imploring you, listen to the stories of the people that you will hear from today, Gary, and you'll hear from Darlene, you'll hear from law enforcement today. We're not alone. There's lots of law enforcement who support qualified immunity. You wouldn't know it because of the rhetoric that we hear, but they absolutely do. So listen to the folks who are speaking today. If you have questions, we have so many great people who have so much information about this. Call on them. That's what they are here for. And we are hoping that, and we are going to work very, very hard, that 2022 is going to be the year that we pass qualified immunity. Thank you.
Yes, Assemblywoman Hunter, thank you so much. And you are exactly right. For those of you who are listening, hear the power from the top down in this coalition, in this collaboration. It is there. When we talk about accountability, they are living it, they are showing it, they are saying it, they are doing it. And that's what makes it so easy for us to show up and be as powerful as we are. So thank you so much. One of the things you said, most important, do you care about the constitutional rights of the people you serve? Like, it is so easy to distill it into that one question. And we know where they stand, for us, against us, or just apathetically watching by the side. Either way, at least we know, and that's what we're looking for. So thank you so much, Assemblywoman. We really do appreciate that. As we continue the conversation, here is where it is a particularly cruel turn of fate when a mother loses her child, but it is an abomination when they are stonewalled and met with resistance, when they seek justice and accountability for the loss of their loved one. This is the fate of so many mothers and parents who have lost the lives of their children to police violence. And it is also particularly cruel and unusual when the loss occurs in a state-run facility where their child or family member is supposed to be safe while serving their sentence. Prisons and jails across New York are responsible for some of the worst violations of civil rights abuses. And what we know now is that 2/3 of all qualified immunity cases involve correction officers. Today, we will hear from mothers who have lost their children at the hands of law enforcement and corrections officers in New York. They will share their stories and lend their voice to our power. Darlene McDay is the mother of Dante Taylor. He was murdered at Wendy Correctional Facility at the hands of correction officers. She remains vigilant as she continues to fight for justice and accountability for her son's death. She is also the co-leader of NQI-NY and here to share with us today her story. Darlene, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Gary. And I want to thank everyone for coming today. It really does mean so much to me to have this support from so many of you. I'm really just overwhelmed with the support. Last year at this time, this really wasn't a conversation. I didn't hear many people talking about qualified immunity. And until what happened to my son, I had never heard of qualified immunity myself. But because of the struggle that I'm in and what I've endured, I'm going to make sure that everyone knows about qualified immunity and everyone knows that qualified immunity must be ended. And we're going to start in New York State and make sure that we go beyond that. But I just want to let you know the story of my son, if you haven't heard. My son, Dante, who was 22 years old in 2017, was incarcerated at Wendy Correctional Facility. On October 7th of 2017, I received a call from someone incarcerated with my son, telling me to call the facility because my son was severely beaten the evening before. He said about 15 correction officers went into my son's cell and beat him, hog-tied him, and threw him down the stairs. After back and forth calling the facility and getting the runaround, Hours later, I finally got the worst call of my life. A reverend called and told me to sit down. And all I remember is screaming. He told me that my 22-year-old son was dead and he had no other information. I tried to do a lot of work to get information. I filed hundreds of FOIL requests, got pictures of my son, which were horrific. My son suffered multiple blunt force trauma all over his entire body, and his head and face were completely deformed. I don't want another family to suffer what I've suffered. And you'll hear from other families that have suffered this loss as well. But when we try to seek justice and we file suit, which is the only thing we're able to do, we're met with things like qualified immunity. And basically, I looked at that as a slap in the face. How could you put the burden on victims to show you an exact case, a heinous case, where someone abused a person in exactly the same way, and then say an officer is not responsible strictly because of qualified immunity? It puts an undue burden on families, and this practice must end. With the advent of technology, we've made a lot of advances. We need to make more. I'm so happy that so many of you joined me today, and I want you to keep fighting with us and continue saying the names of those we lost and not let them die in vain. Thank you.
Darlene, thank you so much for that. We really do appreciate it. You are always in our hearts and always in our minds whenever we talk about these conversations. And as many times as we hear that story, it's absolutely brutal and heart-wrenching. And I hope I never lose my humanity, that I can always feel the pain of that conversation. So with that, thank you very much. I really do appreciate your contribution for everything in our cause today, sharing your story as often as you do. We know how hard that is, and we love you for your tenacity and your strength. So thank you. Next up, we have an inspector, former NYPD executive. And here is a wonderful portion of the conversation for us, because law enforcement and correction officers, they are the greatest offenders of civil rights abuses in New York. And when families seek closure in civil suits, they are met with officers who claim qualified immunity, even when their actions are clear violations of the Constitution. And although many in law enforcement resist the call to ending qualified immunity, there are those who recognize that it does more harm than good. And that more importantly, good cops don't need qualified immunity. They know that when they act in good faith, they are protected by the existing laws and rules that already exist. Qualified immunity is the shield that protects the behavior of bad law enforcement officers or bad actors or problems in the system. Today, we welcome Inspector Corey Pegues, a Queens and New York native. He is a retired NYPD executive, as well as an author of his book, Once a Cop. He is also a motivational speaker, a community leader, and an expert on police-related topics. Corey is also the subject of a documentary called Cops and Robbers, which is currently available. Welcome, Corey Pegues. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me? Can you guys hear me? Okay. Yeah, well, thank you to the Senator, Assemblywoman. Listen, this is a heart-wrenching story. Let me just quantify a couple of things. I have a daughter that's a current police officer and a nephew that's a current detective in the NYPD, and obviously hundreds of friends. So I don't hate cops, but I hate bad cops, and I despise bad police policy. So with that being said, the trust between the police and the communities we serve is just not a preference. It's absolutely a requirement. And what's happening with our agencies, they're failing to protect and serve. And many people would rather take action upon themselves or just suffer in silence. And we can't have that any longer. And then qualified immunity will change that. S 1991 would allow New York civil courts to hear cases through state court where a government employee has violated a citizen's constitutional rights. I understand firsthand why police officers are concerned about losing qualified immunity defense. We want to be clear, right now I want to be clear, that concern is not warranted because just like you said, you still have indemnification in the bill. You still have indemnification in the bill. And when I was doing some research, I was kind of astonished that 99.98% of the cases settled by the cities, they're settled by the cities. That's almost 100% of the cases. The officers, so you can just basically have rogue officers go around, commit all of these heinous acts, all of these crimes, and be protected. And it's unfair. The plaintiffs should have a day in court where their case is heard and there could be at least a monetary reward, if not termination of that officer or officers with an S. Okay, I'm for systematic change, and that change is top down. Law enforcement is a paramilitary organization. And let me just tell you this, in the last year with everybody screaming, restructure, reimagine policing, defund policing, at the top of the list should be qualified immunity. I'm a cop with all of these years. And I'm also a cop that was sued for a couple of $1 million just because I'm the commander. Whenever you're a commander, anybody gets sued, your name goes on the paper. You know, I'm not there just because you're in charge of the precinct. But we got to make sure that we're taking care of the citizens. We need a harmonious relationship with the police and the community, and more important with the Black and brown community, because other ethnicities don't really have a lot of issues with the police. So we got to make sure that these relationships are working, because another thing I found out is like 4% of civil court cases that's thrown out of qualified immunity. So the other 96% of them that's thrown out are on other technicalities. So it's really not a burden qualified immunity that's being tossed out. There's other technicalities. So if we have just a small percentage of cops and they're very egregious cases, if they have to be on the hook, so be it. And that's what I'm saying. We have to fix this relationship. We can no longer go on to this. And they have other protections. The biggest protection that police officers have with the Constitution is the 4th Amendment for unreasonable search and seizure. So even if they're acting unreasonable, but it was a mistake of the heart, they're still going to be protected. We got to get this information. But one of the things we have to do is, in my personal opinion, the unions are deterrent to this qualified immunity. We got to do something about the unions. And I mean, that's on the legislative side, Assemblywoman and the Senator, you guys have to fix that. But I'm an advocate for it. I'm glad that y'all brought me on. I'm happy to engage in anything that I can do to spread my voice. Again, I wasn't expecting the NYPD, and I'm for getting rid of qualified immunity. No longer should rogue officers run around. I know cops that got 5, 6, 7 lawsuits that was settled by the police department. And it's like nobody wakes up. You know, it's like Eric Garner gets killed by Pantaleo, and you look in Pantaleo's background, he was sued for $200,000. He had 8 civilian complaints, but no one says anything. And then you end up with a Eric Garner, and now everybody's in the uproar. No, we should have caught this very early on, that this cop was out of control, but the qualified immunity keeps them in play. So thank you very much for having me on the show today. Thank you.
Corey, thank you so much for being here. Your words are so powerful, and to hear it from an individual from the inside out. Oftentimes we're having these conversations, everyone outside of the police department, everyone outside of law enforcement looking in, commenting on what it looks like from the outside in. You're able to share what that sounds like from the inside out. And it's so powerful and welcoming to hear that we have individuals. And this is for everybody on this call. There are individuals who are law enforcement, former law enforcement, who recognize the merits of our conversation and are willing to stand with us as we move forward. So thank you so much. Your presence here is absolutely powerful and necessary. Thank you so much, Corey.
Thank you.
Next up, we have a statement that's going to be read from Tamara Carter, who is the mother of Brandon Rodriguez. who lost his life at 25 years of age in the current humanitarian crisis that is Rikers Island. Darlene?
Darlene, you're on mute. You're gonna start over again?
Yes. Hi, everyone. Your screen's not sharing. Okay. All right. So I have the very difficult task of reading a statement from the mother of Brandon Rodriguez. And I hope that you've all heard his name before, because if you haven't, then we haven't done our job. Everyone should know the story of what happened to Brandon Rodriguez, and everyone should be appalled by his loss of life. Brandon Rodriguez was just 25 years old when he lost his life at Rikers Island. He was there just 6 days, but 6 days proved to be too much in those inhumane conditions. His mother is listening today, but she's unable to speak because she's at work. So I'm going to read a statement that she wrote. Brandon was still a very young man who deserves to be alive today. He was a son, a brother, an uncle, and a grandson. He didn't last a week in that disgusting place they called Rikers Island. My son, Brandon Rodriguez, deserves justice. I still don't know everything that happened to him 5 months later, and I'm still in limbo. He was my baby. Now he's gone. Please don't forget my son, my baby. My son suffered from depression, ADHD, and bipolar, and should have never been left in a shower cell, left alone to die. Where are my answers? To know to this day that people are still being held in shower cells on Rikers Island, knowing that's where my son passed away, completely sickens me. I hope that everyone remembers Brandon. And I hope that we continue to support his mother, who, when I reached out to her and asked her if I could read a statement for her, we had a conversation mother to mother, and she said that she has to work to support her family. And she feels like she's letting her son down, not being out there more. And I had to tell her, your son is so proud of you. And he would be so proud of you. And I just hope that I've done her justice today. And I want everyone to continue to fight for justice for Brandon. Thank you.
Incredibly powerful, Darlene. Thank you so much for sharing that. And to Tamara, if you can hear us, listen, your son is proud of you, and so are we. We thank you for your voice. We thank you for your power and your courage. What you are going through is absolutely devastating. And not having the opportunity to be here, to want to be here and can't because you are concentrating on taking care of your family and your responsibilities while being unduly burdened with this. It's cruel and unusual. And please know that we send our love and our strength to you, and your son is not forgotten. And in this moment in private, in our own screens, I ask you to say his name, Brandon Rodriguez. In your own space, say his name, Brandon Rodriguez. You know, some of these conversations are really tough, but that lends to our strength and our power and our resolve to keep going. And as such, our next conversation, our next presenter, our next speaker Assemblyman Kenny Burgos, who represents the residents of Assembly District 85, which includes Rikers Island. Growing up in the Bronx, he experienced the realities that face so many members of his community. And it was these experiences that inspired him to run for office and address the disparities, racial justice, and socioeconomic issues that he observed. Assemblyman Burgos remains an outspoken critic of the ongoing humanitarian crisis at Rikers Island. Assemblyman Burgos, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. First off, I want to say hello, and of course, thank you to Darlene for always advocating and sharing her story to really spread the word on why we need to end qualified immunity. I think my colleague Pam Hunter said it best. You know, this is the year, right? This is not a year, although it'll be an election year, where we back down. This is the year where we're going to continue to push forward. We're going to go against the grain, and we're going to do what needs to be done. Because we've been hearing these stories for, frankly, way too long. You know, as someone who is a proud, born and raised New Yorker, born and raised in the Bronx, I grew up in the era of stop and frisk going to high school. And I think if you grew up in that era, you know all too well what happens when you give sometimes officers too much power coupled with qualified immunity. They will violate your rights. I mean, you will lose constitutional rights when these are on the books. And it is up to us, as Pam said, to give people their constitutional rights back. This is just an egregious grab of power that has gone on in our country for too long, and we have lost lives. We will continue to lose lives because of it. As you said, right now, there is a crisis on Rikers. People that I truly believe I represent, although they come from all walks of life, but I can't help but feel the pain that they're right there on that island. As someone who's been to Rikers both professionally and personally, again, as someone who's grew up in this city, who's interacted with police in all types of ways, I know that this is something that needs to be done. We have to end qualified immunity here in New York. We have to end it throughout this country. This is the number one priority if we are to see a change in policing in our country and in our state. So I'm proud to be a sponsor. I am looking forward to working with all of you to actively push and get this bill passed and get it signed by the governor before this session ends. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. We do appreciate you, Assemblyman Burgos, and we definitely look forward to working with you. We know there's a lot of work to be done, and you are ready just like we are. So thank you so much for being here. Our next speaker is the Assemblywoman from District 34, the first person of color, woman of color, and Latina to represent her district. She is an unapologetic social justice leader fighting for the values of dignity, justice, and equity in New York. And she is now lending her power to ending qualified immunity here in New York. Welcome, Assemblywoman Jessica Gonzalez Rojas.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And I first want to thank and commend all the advocates, all the family members who have been impacted by these unjust laws, to share my love for you, my gratitude for your voice. And, you know, it triggers me every time I have to hear Darlene's story. You know, it's so difficult to relive that trauma over and over again, but your voice is so important in this fight. And I thank you for that. You know, we've seen how New York City and New York State, how folks took to the streets to express outrage about the murder of George Floyd and so many Black and brown people who have been murdered at the hands of law enforcement. And we know that government officials use the qualified immunity defense more than any other. So by ending qualified immunity, we are saying that no one is above the law. No one is above the law, including law enforcement. We know that the qualified immunity robs victims of state violence the opportunity to get legal and financial reparations, and that is not what public safety is. I am so proud to support this bill. I'm so proud to stand with advocates today. You know, I am someone who in my first year in the assembly had visited about 5 different facilities or had 5 visits to different facilities, corrections facilities, whether it was a youth facility, Rikers Island, women's facility, Bedford Hills. And I see the unjust treatment of our community. I see how people are behind cages and there's no justice. So I'm so proud to stand with each of you to end once and for all qualified immunity. And I encourage all my colleagues to support the passage of this bill. I'm proud to be a co-sponsor, and I'm proud to stand with each and every one of you. So thank you for your fight, and we're in it together. Let's get it done this year.
Love that. Assemblywoman Rojas, thank you very much. We do appreciate your presence, and your voice, and your power to this conversation. It's so incredibly powerful to know that we don't just have sponsors to this bill and co-sponsors. What we are quickly finding is that we have champions of this bill, and those individuals are taking this conversation to the nooks and crannies and the spaces that we as citizens can't take it. Y'all are taking it there, and we are so grateful and appreciative for your support in this battle. So thank you very much for being here. We do appreciate you. Next up, and this was beautiful when I saw this name pop up on the screen. This is a young woman who we've been working with, incredibly helpful, incredibly powerful. She continues to be that person behind the scenes, putting all of these things together and making these amazing events go off, and collaborating and bringing up some of the most amazing ideas to make us as powerful and poignant and impactful as we are. Kelly Young is a civil rights campaign coordinator at Vocal New York, part of the coalition to ending qualified immunity in New York. Graduating from Tufts University and NYU School of Law, she is committed to living out her faith and advocating for actual justice. And we are so fortunate and blessed to be in her presence and just have her fighting alongside of us. So Kelly, thank you so much for being here.
Gary, I was not expecting that introduction, and I'm blushing. I am truly honored to share space with so many powerful advocates. As Gary mentioned, I'm the Civil Rights Campaign Coordinator at Vocal New York, which is a grassroots membership-led organization that is working to end the war on drugs and HIV/AIDS epidemic and homelessness, and most notably for this call right now, in mass incarceration and mass criminalization. And our members and leaders have been harmed and brutalized by law enforcement officials across the state, whether it's on the street, in jails, or in prisons. And far too often, those officers are shielded from liability and accountability, completely abdicating the justice they claim to uphold. And you know, as Vocal New York, it's our mandate to end mass incarceration and end mass criminalization, and we cannot fully dismantle the system while those in positions of power are able to harm us with impunity. And that is why this bill is on our 2022 legislative platform, and why we are, as Gary mentioned, champions of this bill. Qualified immunity empowers abuse. It denies us justice and accountability and makes public safety impossible. It's a threat to the health and well-being of my members and my leaders, myself and my family, and it has to end. And so again, I am grateful to share space and to fight alongside all of you.
Love that, Kelly. Thank you so much. And your shared space is appreciated. Listen, we can do a lot on our own, but we go so much farther together. And that's what we have quickly realized. In the brief amount of time that we've been together, look at how far we have gone. And there is so much more to be done, and we are ready for that. So thank you so much for your presence and your actions. It does make our work so much easier and so much more impactful. Next up, we have another statement. Darlene will be reading this again. This is from Nancy Cater Maldonado, who is the mother of Jonathan Maldonado. At 21 years old, Jonathan lost his life in police custody in Greenburgh, New York, a town in Westchester. There have been multiple attempts to silence Nancy from speaking out against the excessive use of force that contributed to her son's death. And we are here to make sure she has a platform in which her voice can be heard, and we welcome her statement today.
Thank you, Gary. As you said, Jonathan Maldonado was just 21 years old when he died at the hands of police. And Many of you may not have heard his name before. I learned of his name through an article that I read, never heard of the case before. And this happened in 2017. At the same time as my son Dante died in 2017, which is now over 4 years ago, Jonathan Maldonado died. But many of us probably never heard his name. And I want everyone to know his name now and to spread his name and never forget. Lawyers for Greenberg want to silence Jonathan's mother, Nancy. The lawsuit claims that Jonathan was subjected to excessive force by police and that police failed to provide medical assistance. They claim that Jonathan was in a Best Buy. Some workers there thought he might have stolen something, chased him into a park and called police. They said they saw Jonathan put something in his mouth. Then the police came, and after that interaction, Jonathan was dead. He was, again, only 21 years old. Look at that beautiful boy and his mother. I'm going to read a statement because, again, Nancy had to work today, so she's not able to speak. But I will carry that for her and I will speak for her because I will not let her be silenced. She said, Jonathan was just 21 years old. He was known to many as JB or Johnny Boy. He died on November 29th of 2017 while in the custody of Greenberg police. He was a middle brother to Freddie and Matthew. He was a boyfriend to Jaylene of 2 years, the uncle and godfather to his niece Liliana, and most importantly, my son, our precious son. It's been a little over 4 years and I miss him more with each passing day. My life's at a standstill because I have no closure. I visit him almost every other day at the cemetery. And sadly, the New York State AG came back with a report in favor of the officers. Although we've had 2 medical examiners' reports. And the first one done by the county medical examiner said my son died of drugs. We hired another medical examiner and said that my son died of cardiac arrest from the taser that they unnecessarily shocked him with 2 times. And he had positional asphyxiation from them being on his back. Again, look at Jonathan. I want everyone to remember his name and say his name and give their support to his mother, Nancy, and make sure that she cannot be silenced. Because that's what they do to mothers like Nancy and like Tamara and like myself. But as many of you know, I will never be silenced. We will fight for our sons and fight for what's right and fight for justice. And I hope that you continue to fight with me and us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Darlene. Another powerful statement from another mother who is not able to be here. It absolutely breaks my heart to hear that someone is not able to support and represent and honor their family members because, you know, we have to work so hard to just survive in our settings, in our environment. And when something so atrocious happens, oftentimes we don't have resource and we don't have the support and capacity to be in multiple places at once. And we don't have the resources to just say, forget what's not important to me. Let me concentrate on this thing. My family, my child was just so important, so critical, so passionate. And we just don't have the ability sometimes to be there. It breaks my heart for these mothers and these families. So I just wanted to send again our love to Nancy Kader Maldonado and let her know that we hear her. She will not be forgotten. her son will not be forgotten. And in that space, I would just like to quietly, in our own space, in our own window, say his name, Jonathan Maldonado. Say his name, Jonathan Maldonado. And he will not be forgotten, as none of us will be. Darlene, thank you so much for that statement. Next up, and I've mentioned this earlier about our sponsors. We have been so fortunate in this space to accumulate the sponsorship that we have in the brief amount of time that we've been putting this together. And when we started to ask for sponsors, this man stepped up and said, forget that, I'm going to be a champion. And when we started to ask for champions, he insisted on being a hero. At each step of our campaign, Assemblyman Harvey Epstein from the District 74 in Manhattan has shown up and helped to amplify the message and success that we have seen. And we are so very grateful for your continued support. Welcome, Assemblyman Harvey Epstein.
Well, I didn't expect that. So thank you. Thank you. This is such a deeply moving Zoom. I mean, Darlene, like the stories you tell and continue to tell, and the experience that you've had and so many families have had, losing a loved one in such a difficult way, and to feel like the government has taken no responsibility, has done nothing to accept cause heartache and pain and put barriers in front of you and every other family, should require us to act. Qualified immunity is being used as a shield to prevent families from getting information about how their loved one was likely killed. Qualified immunity is being used as a tool that people use, that people in government use to protect themselves. And it's our obligation as state legislators to say, no longer. We will not allow this to happen. We want the truth to come out. If someone's been abused by a police officer or by a corrections officer, someone's been killed by someone in government, that family should have the information. We demand that that family have information. We demand that there be consequences to those actions. We see bad things happen in our world. Over the weekend, a woman getting pushed on the subway platform. Horrible. There may not be a good answer for those families about why, but there are consequences. Here, we may not have the answers why, but there needs to be consequences. And ending qualified immunity is one critical step in creating consequences for people involved in these heinous acts. These heinous acts that we hear about time and time again, and government continues to shield their actors, our actors, from responsibility. So I will continue to stand with you and continue to stand to end qualified immunity. I want to thank our sponsor, Senator Jackson, and Assemblymember Hunter for taking this on and leading this amazing effort. And I will continue to fight with you until we get this passed and until we talk about real reform in our messed up system we call corrections and we call government. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for all your leadership, and I will continue to fight with you.
Thank you, Assemblyman. Thank you so much. Again, we really appreciate every step of the way that we've gone is every step of the way that you have gone. And you continue to show up, and we really do appreciate your presence, your voice, your sponsorship, your championship. So thank you. Next up, let's see, indeed. So next up, and this is another welcome addition to our NQI family. When we started to reach out, there were few individuals and few organizations that immediately turned around and said, you know, that's my cup of tea. I'm definitely willing to support you in your space. And this was one of them. Mallory Nugent from Everytown for Gun Safety. Mallory Nugent is the Regional Director of State Affairs for Everytown for Gun Safety. Everytown for Gun Safety is a movement of Americans working together to end gun violence and build safer communities. Currently, more than 1.5 million mayors, moms, cops, teachers, survivors, gun owners, and everyday Americans have come together to make their own community safer. Together, they are fighting for the changes that they know will save lives, and she is here today to lend her power to ending qualified immunity. Most importantly, Mallory has been an ally from the moment we called, and we are so grateful for that. Thank you and welcome, Mallory.
Thank you so much. I so appreciate and inspired by all the mothers who shared today and all the advocates and lawmakers who are here. As mentioned, I'm Mallory Nugent. I'm the Regional Director of State Affairs for the Northeast at Everytown for Gun Safety. Everytown is the largest gun violence prevention organization in the country with over 6 million supporters, including Moms Demand and Students Demand Action chapters right here in New York, fighting for common sense gun safety measures that can help save lives. We believe unequivocally that police violence is gun violence, and that like any bad actor, there should be accountability for law enforcement officers and corrections officers who fail to act in accordance with the law and abuse their authority in ways that harm those they're sworn to protect. If you care about safe communities and ending gun violence, you need to care about ending qualified immunity. Our communities must be able to look to law enforcement officers to keep them safe, but in order to do that, there needs to be a foundation of trust. In order to stop violence of all kinds, including police violence, communities must be able to depend upon the people charged with keeping them safe. Repealing barriers to accountability like qualified immunity is one step towards that goal and our larger goal of putting an end to gun violence. I and Everytown and Moms and Students Demand are proud to stand with and Zoom with this impressive coalition of advocates, lawmakers, New Yorkers, mothers, sisters, brothers, to call on the legislature to pass S1991 and A4331, life-saving pieces of legislation. And we stand ready to fight with you until we get this done. Thank you all so much for your time and for all you've put into this.
Thank you so much, Mallory. We certainly do appreciate it, and we appreciate your support as always. It's always welcome, it's always needed, and it makes us stronger and more powerful. We love it at every event. You continue to show up, and again, this is the power that we've been accumulating in our coalition. As you can hear, for everybody involved, we have powerful speakers, we have powerful champions, we have powerful support, and with you, we become even stronger. Next up, we have Assemblywoman Karines Reyes. She represents the 87th District in the Bronx. Originally from the outskirts of Santo Domingo, she now serves the communities of New York, and we welcome Assemblywoman Reyes.
Thank you so much for having me. I'll be very brief because so many of my colleagues have colored this fight in the very way that we all feel it. The reality is that for many New Yorkers, interactions with law enforcement can mean life or death. And so many of the testimony that we've heard today illustrates that perfectly. And I have to thank the mothers of Brandon Rodriguez and Jonathan Maldonado for really sharing their stories. We shouldn't have qualified immunity. It doesn't make our communities any more safe. Actually, this cloak makes our communities less safe each and every day. And I'm here to lend my support, not just as a legislator, but as a mom of 2 brown boys in the Bronx who fears for their safety and who fears for a system that isn't there to protect them and can criminalize them just for being who they are. This is a fight that we take very seriously in state government currently, thanks to the litany of champions that we have. I have to thank my colleagues, Senator Jackson, Assemblymember Hunter, for their advocacy in this work. And we are the driving force behind them. We will continue to push for this because I believe this is the year that we're going to make it happen. Thank you again.
Love that, love that, love that. Thank you so much. We do appreciate it, Assemblywoman Reyes. So as we move forward, I believe that our next speaker, Senator Alessandra Biaggi, represents her home District 34 in the Bronx and Westchester. She is also the chair of Ethics and Internal Governance Committee. Senator Biaggi has led the charge in New York to pass legislation that strengthens protections for survivors and holds employers accountable for addressing sexual misconduct. And today she lends power and her voice to the campaign to end qualified immunity. Senator Biaggi, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here to support both of my colleagues, Senator Jackson, of course, who makes sure that we do not forget about the fight for ending qualified immunity, and Assemblymember Hunter, who made a really important comment that I want to underscore and emphasize, which is this. The time is always right to do what's right. And it shouldn't matter whether it is an election year or whether it's not. It's about doing our jobs in the way that people are relying and counting on us to do our jobs, so that we all can make sure that whenever we walk away from the world that we are in as leaders in the legislature, that we're proud to have left it all on the field, that we gave everything that we can to make sure that as many harms and as many injustices were stopped. And so this, to me, is a no-brainer. And the question I find that I'm asking myself is, why is it okay to operate within a justice system that just continues to perpetuate assault and killing and the murders, really, of innocent Black and brown New Yorkers by police officers? It's a crazy question to even ask, because anybody who's asked that question, of course, would respond and say it's not okay. And yet here we are finding ourselves once again fighting to make sure that qualified immunity is ended in the state of New York. I will just say this, because I've heard this shared many times. I want to reaffirm my commitment to this issue. It is a matter of justice and accountability. And it's important that we change the culture of all of our state systems to hold government officials accountable by ending qualified immunity. And let me end on this note. When we talk about ending qualified immunity and we talk about police officers, I think it's important for all of us who might get challenged on supporting this bill to recognize that we don't have to get caught in the trap of a dichotomy. It's not, do you care about police officers or do you want to end qualified immunity? No, that's a false dichotomy that we have to literally break. And so I am committed to doing that. It is not acceptable. I will not accept it, not from police officers in my own community or from any individual who challenges me on supporting this bill, which, by the way, nobody has. But the point of me sharing that is to just say that it is a false dichotomy. Don't fall for the trap. And frankly, I think that this is the perfect year to do this, because it continues the progress that we have already made on accountability and reform in our justice system. And any person who unfortunately passes away or dies in the hands of police because of brutality or other reasons or abuse, frankly, at the end of the day, because we have a tool to fix this and we're not doing it, it falls on all of us in the legislature who are not actually pushing as hard as we can to make this happen. And so you can count on me. I'm very proud of Senator Jackson for always making sure that the issues that he champions and that his name is primarily on are always at the top of our consciousness. So thank you, Senator Jackson, my brother. I appreciate you so much. And thank you to all of you for sharing your stories, being vulnerable, and also really committing and recommitting to this issue. But just know that this is the right time to do this, because it's the right thing to do. So thank you.
Senator Biaggi, thank you so much. That was absolutely powerful and incredible. And she is right. Don't fall for the false dichotomy. Just don't fall for it. That's a conversation meant to waste your time. It's distraction politics at its worst. There's no reason that these things can't exist. Two things can be true at once, except for two systems of law. That's not okay. We need to get rid of that and get all on the same page so everybody's held accountable the exact same way. So we love it. And you've heard some of the powerful voices in our campaign. And that's why we know we are going to pass and we are going to end qualified immunity in 2022. Those of you who don't know now, you know. More cowbell, Senator Jackson, more cowbell. That's what I'm talking about.
Yep,
So with that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to pass it to you one more time, Senator Jackson. I'm not sure if you had something to say you wanted to It looked like you might have been looking to say something, and then I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up with Darlene.
Wrap it
see
up.
Member Khalil Anderson is here, and I just like to shout him out because he
Oh,
has been a
yes.
champion. So if he just wants to say a quick word, I just want to give him that chance because he
And
has been a champion for us.
He's a powerful young person that we need on the front line.
Thank you so much, Darlene, and thank you, Action Jackson, as they call him. I just want to briefly say some words of uplifting and empowerment in this moment as we're fighting to hold police accountable. We just celebrated the 37th anniversary of Dr. King. And one of the things that he was very, very outspoken on is injustice being any injustice that exists somewhere. It exists everywhere, and anywhere it exists everywhere. And so when we talk about injustice, it can adequately be spoken about when we're talking about qualified immunity, a system that creates two spaces, one for folks who should be held accountable and one for folks who shouldn't be held accountable. But all public servants should be held accountable. And that's why we have to fight to pass Senator Jackson and Assemblymember Hunter's bill, qualified immunity, this legislative session, to ensure that we don't have those two systems of justice, so that to ensure that Jonathan's name is remembered and all the other folks who were killed, murdered, hurt, harmed due to this unjust law that we have on the books. And if we repeal it, we'll be able to make sure that these families are made whole, and that the taxpayer is not the one that's footing the bill for the mistakes of public servants and the lives lost of public servants, which is currently the space that we're in today, where you all are paying for the mistakes of police officers and other folks who are protected by this statute. And so I'm confident that Assemblywoman Hunter and Senator Jackson are going to be working hard with each and every one of the advocates who are on the call today, each and every one of the family members who have lost someone and have been hurt by this statute. So I'm looking forward to fighting alongside you to make sure that we hold police officers accountable. And this is one of the best ways that we can do that.
Love that. Love that. Assemblymember Khalil Anderson, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for lending your voice to this conversation. And we know you show up, and you show up consistently. And we've seen you every time we have an event, and we love your presence. And we're so grateful to have you here as part of our coalition. So thank you. This has been such a powerful, powerful day. All throughout, we picked up co-sponsors today. We've had an incredibly powerful moment here with us this last hour, driving home the importance of this conversation and letting us all know that 2022 is the year that we end qualified immunity here in New York. So thank you all so much for being here. We're going to finish up with Darlene McDay, as she has a few things to share as we get ready to leave. Darlene?
Thank you, Gary. Okay, we have the asks. First, for any of you in any districts, please go to our website, share which district you're in, share who your assembly member is or who your senator is, because we want you on those calls that we need to make to get more co-sponsors. To the legislators, we also want you to speak out. Speak out as you always do, but keep speaking out. Speak to your colleagues, push them to get on board with this. The other thing that I want to say is that we launched a campaign on Friday. It's a postcard campaign asking people to share stories of maybe something that happened to a loved one or themselves in a prison or jail. Also, if you don't have those stories, just say why you think qualified immunity is important. We want to get these to certain legislators to push them and show that this is important to their constituencies and this is important to all of us. And then the last thing I want to say is that we also are starting a sign-on letter. So Katarina hopefully will drop that in the chat. The sign-on letter, it's kind of like a petition. We want you to sign on as an individual. If you have groups, pass that on to people, kind of like a petition. We just want all the names and all the different towns in New York to show that this is not just a New York City issue. This is a New York issue. This is really a whole United States issue, but we're starting with New York. We're focused on New York right now. We're going to pass it. We're going to be the model because this is model legislation here. This is unheard of model legislation, and we want to be the first in New York. So thank you all for your support, and keep following us and keep fighting for us. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
All right, thank you, everyone. Absolutely amazing. Today was beautiful. Your presence was appreciated. We are so grateful for it. We know that there is plenty of work to be done. We don't talk about these things lightly. We just lean into it because we know we are absolutely capable of taking on that burden, taking on that pressure, and still delivering this bill across the finish line. So be prepared, be aware. We're going to communicate with you throughout the legislative session. There will be other events to show up to. There will be moments where you can share your story, your power, your voice, and you will be able to help us pass these bills. S1991, A4331. We are ready to end qualified immunity in New York. So thank you very much, everyone, for being here. Go enjoy the remainder of your day. And thank you again. We are ending qualified immunity. Ring that
follow
bell.
our website. Look at our website so you can keep informed of everything that's going on. It's ndqiny.org. ndqiny.org. Just follow us and know how you could be involved. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you all. So amazing today.
Good night, everyone.
Great job.
Good night. See y'all when we back outside.
That's right.
I can't wait until this could be in person.
What? It's lit. Trust me.
Oh my
I'm right here in the Capitol. Oops.